The Spies, again, an incredible story. And as you pointed out, it needs commentary. How can people who see the 10 plagues, who cross the ocean on dry land, who hear God speak from the top of the mountain, food falls from heaven, what do you mean they all of a sudden didn't believe in God? What? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Or didn't trust him, perhaps.
Right? That doesn't make sense.
Right.
So here's the rest of the story. There was no question. The spies trusted God to perform miracles endlessly, and no miracle is too difficult. What happened was, Moshe says to the people, we are about to enter the promised land. We need to send spies. And these really good, holy people, in a sense, they said to Moshe, why do we need spies? Let's just go, we'll do it, miracles will happen. What's the problem? All of a sudden we need spies? We're not doing anything. God is doing it all. Let God do it. We just got to go. So let's go, and God will give us the land miraculously. And Moshe said, no. Coming into the land means we have to take responsibility. The age of miracles is over. We got to go into the land. We have to settle the land. We have to become farmers. We have to become soldiers. We got to become a people with a land. And that does not happen miraculously. That you need to do. The spies then said, wait. If it's not going to be miraculous, then we can't do it. We can trust God to do it like he's done everything else. We're going to do it? I don't think we can do it. So let's not go. Let's stay here and continue to rely on God's miracles. That was their mistake.
But did they think that was what God wanted, that for them to resist?
Yes.
It's like like a loving couple saying, like they don't want to let go before they have to, he has to go out to war or something.
Yes. Like children, they felt, no, let's stay with daddy, and daddy will take care of us. But daddy wanted them to grow up and become independent and take some responsibility. And they said, we're not ready for that. And they were right. They were not ready. The next generation, they were ready. So the generation that left Egypt were really not ready. And so they continued to live a spiritual life for the 40 years in the desert until they all passed away. Their children were a little more down to earth, and they were ready to go into the land.
So it wasn't.
This is what the spies actually said.
Right.
They said, the land eats up its inhabitants. Which means if we go into Israel and try to depend on our own ability, it's going to eat us up. We'll have no time for God. We'll have no time for holiness. We'll have no time for spirituality. We will be consumed, eaten up by the daily responsibilities, and we will become like everybody else. The two good guys, they said, it's a piece of cake. The bad guys said, it will eat us up. The good guys say, no, it's a piece of cake.
You've given new meaning to that phrase.
I didn't hear.
I said you've given new meaning to that phrase.
Lachmeinu heim. They are our bread. They will nurture us. They won't destroy us. Going into the land from a spiritual perspective, going from the desert into the land was like going from faith to service. Faith is a wonderful thing, but it's not enough. You take the faith and you use it to serve God. Going into the land means you're going to focus on the serving, not on the faith. Or in different words, in the beginning, the Jewish people who came out of Egypt were overwhelmed by holiness. Overwhelmed. They didn't know what hit them. All of a sudden, they're not slaves. All of a sudden, the water parts in their honor. All of a sudden, God is speaking to them. It was overwhelming. So it's natural and predictable that they didn't know what to make of this. So their faith was a faith of helplessness. I don't know what's going on. You better just trust God. We are helpless. God will do everything.
Right. Which, by the way, is very prevalent religious doctrine today.
It's part of the corruption of religion.
It's like total surrender. Total surrender.
It was an immature relationship with God. We were babies, and he was mommy and daddy, which is beautiful in its innocence. God says, I will never forget your innocence. You followed me into the desert like innocent babes. It was beautiful. But then it's time to grow up, take responsibility, become partners in the family business. Can't remain babies forever. So there's a difference between a faith that cancels you and takes over completely versus a faith that you internalize. It's your identity now. That's the difference between what you can digest versus what you can't digest. So when the two spies, when Kalev and Yeshua said, no, we can eat this, what they meant was, we can internalize godliness. We're not babies anymore.
And what does internalizing godliness mean? What does that mean practically?
It means make it your project. Make it yours. Godliness and the perfecting of the world and bringing God into the world, that's your thing now. It's not God doing it and you just go along with it for the ride. So internalizing godliness makes it possible to be soldiers and farmers and workers and still be godly. You don't have to disown the world. You don't have to disengage from the world in order to be godly. That's a childish, immature godliness. But once you internalize godliness, then you can be a godly soldier. You can be a godly farmer. You can be a godly human being. You don't have to wander in a desert and have God feed you with food from heaven. So there's the difference. In the desert, God brought food from heaven. Once they enter the land, they're going to have to bring food out of the earth. They didn't think they could handle that. and they were right. They were not ready to internalize godliness. They were simply overwhelmed by it. The second generation, they were able to see themselves embodying godliness in every way, in every role that they're going to play. Whatever they're going to be doing, it's all going to be imbued with godliness because they can digest godliness. They can internalize it. So it wasn't that they didn't think God could perform miracles. That would be ridiculous. Oh, this miracle, no, this even God can't do. They were not foolish people. They were very responsible people. And they came back and they said, living in a land on your own strength, we can't do it. We don't have enough of Torah. We don't have enough absorbed godliness to be able to make it work. So the children took over, and they became the people of the land.
So it wasn't a punishment.
Magnificently successful.
So it wasn't a punishment, so to speak. But we also talk about Tisha B'Av, being this was the first Tisha B'Av. It sounds like this was a great source of sadness. I mean, it is, but it sounds like it's just they weren't ready. Okay, why is that so terrible?
And what is Tisha B'Av? What is the destruction of the temple? On a much more sophisticated level, living in Israel with a temple, with a Beit HaMikdash, with prophets running around speaking in God's voice, that became a little bit like the desert. Godliness became too easy, too available. Could you be a Jew if you didn't have a temple? Could you serve God without prophets reminding you every day? Could you go to a land that is not a holy land and be holy there? That was the next challenge. So the similarity between the desert and Israel was that it was still too easy. It was still godliness coming from heaven, from the temple, from the prophet, from the holiness of the land. So yes, it was a big advancement, but it still had that flavor. Godliness was limited. It could exist only in the Holy Land. Outside the Holy Land, there would be no godliness. Galut would eat us up, and it would be the end of godliness. So God said, no, there is no end to godliness. So I'm going to take away the temple. I'm going to scatter you all over the world, and you're going to make the rest of the world a holy land.
Wow.
And it will not be the end. It will be the real, deep, permanent godliness that is indestructible and independent of land, of temple, of prophets, just Jews and Torah.
Can I ask a funny question? But why did he feel the need to scatter us more to the west than the east?
I guess the West is unholier, more unholy.
Why? Why is that?
It's the bottom part of the world. It's the bottom half.
But the eastern side, they seem to be. There seems to be much more of people who are at like they have religious practices that make them at peace. But I don't know where God fits into that equation.
It's still easier to be religious in the East because that's where the Torah was given. That's where the Holy Land is. So it's not your own steam. You're carried, at least a little bit, by the holiness of the place. It can be abused. You can turn it into a negative spirituality, but there's definitely a spirituality or a religiosity about the place. Whereas the West, it's all new, bringing godliness to where it doesn't happen by itself. And that's a big accomplishment. So in all of these instances, we say in the davening, we say, because of our sins, we were exiled from the land. What sin? Why are we constantly bad-mouthing our ancestors?
Well, it says that.
They sinned and they got punished. They sinned and they got thrown out. They sinned and they...
But it says that. It says that in the davening.
I know. But how do we explain that? How do we constantly speak lashon hara about our ancestors?
It wasn't me who wrote it.
So the word chet, which we translate as sin, is not correct. Avon is sin. Pesha is sin. Chet means imperfection, incomplete. Mipnei chatoenu, it was because of our chet that we were exiled. And that is, we were not complete. We were still relying on a godliness that is given to us rather than the godliness that we ourselves can produce. So we were still a little immature, depending on the Beis Hamikdash, depending on the holiness of the environment. What would happen if you take away that environment? How real would godliness be? We needed to show that to the world, to ourselves, that without a temple, Judaism is not over. Without being in the Holy Land, we're still the Jewish people and the Torah is still real and true. In fact, it can turn an unholy land into a holy land, which is how we bring Mashiach. So there's always the positive that is right there just beneath the surface. The negative is on the surface because we are negative. And so we immediately assume that God is being negative. He's always disappointed. He's always angry. He's always looking for ways to punish and to... No. Not the case at all. God is amazed by what what his children have accomplished and will continue to accomplish. There is no disappointment ever, because that would mean that we're going backwards, and we never go backwards. The world is always moving forward. Sometimes it's in a mysterious way, but we can't lose sight of that. The Torah is always helping to bring more kindness and more life, not punishment and death. We gotta remember that.
Would you say Moshiach, the concept of the Messiah coming, the prophets talk about the knowledge of God will, just be completely abundant. I think it's something like the sea or something like that. And my question is, will that be the case? Because basically there won't be a difference between miracle and nature. In other words, we will just see God everywhere. Is that a true, a right understanding?
Yeah. We will see nature as God's tool, not competition.
Right. Right. And will it be his?
Nature and God are opposite ends and pulling in opposite directions. Nature pulls us down like gravity, and God is trying to drag us up in some spiritual way.
And will we ever transcend nature? In other words, it sounds like you're saying God will communicate to us through nature. Will we ever transcend nature to have a higher form of communication with God?
You won't need a higher form. That's the beauty of it. We won't have to escape nature to get to a higher place. Nature will be the highest place. In other words, the essence of godliness will be in nature, not in heaven. Earth will become holier than heaven. So if you want to find holiness, you will not climb the ladder to heaven. The souls in heaven will all come down the ladder to go back into their bodies, because the ultimate godliness will be here, in the physical, in nature,
and just
without the negative side of nature.